The recording's in progress.
I do want to say I had an Alexa notification today, and I was like, Alexa, what are my notifications? And Alexa, in her Alexa voice, started saying, "No, shut up, Alexa. I'm not talking to you right now." She she started saying, "An author you follow, Mike Jack Stoumbos, has released a new novel," and I was like, "Oh crap! I need to record that so I can send that to him." And I failed, but I at least wanted you to know that it came up on my Alexa thingamabob, and it was like so freaking cool.
That is awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. I didn't know those kinds of things were happening, but like
That
I guess it stands.
totally happens.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
It was wild. I was like, I know that guy.
Awesome. Yeah, that's fun.
All
these new exciting things.
Yeah.
Cool. So we got a couple more people coming in. Think we'll wait until the hour to go to like be in go mode. I'm checking my links to make sure that things are available. I'm going to repost the survey. So the book giveaway survey. Partway through this call, I'm going to be doing a drawing, and my form of drawing is to look at a spreadsheet and click a random number generator so that, like, you know, we get a number generated for a book giveaway. And the plan is to do two of them. One of them is going to be for just active mailing list folks in general, including people who are signing up here. And then one is going to be strictly for people on this call, so that we can do, you know, some form of a book giveaway. And that would be physical copy of Seed in the Sky. Or if you're like, I have not gotten that far in the series yet, I would like either Signal or Rupture, then that is an option too. So making note of that. Cool. Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm in the ready to go mode. Megan, where are you at?
I'm here.
Okay. Cool. Do we have anyone else in the waiting room? It looks like we do not. Cool. Well,
Nope.
Let's kick this thing off officially and get it going.
Alrighty. What is that? Like
It was not me. I thought you programmed intro music.
No, someone's got sneaking in their songs or something. All right. Well then, welcome to launch of Seed in the Sky by Mike Jack Stoumbos. The third installment of the space opera series, This Fine Crew, by Mike Jack Stoumbos. Mike Jack is a speculative fiction author disguised as a normal school teacher who lives with his wife and their parrot. A very, very cute parrot, by the way. He's a first place winner of the Writers of the Future contest, has stories in a number of anthologies, and likes his sci-fi and fantasy with a touch of humor. I can testify to this. I love his humor. So, without further ado, you want to give us a summary of Seed in the Sky, Mike, and you know what is it we're also looking at as far as the cover?
I'll pop back onto the cover. Yeah. All right. So Seed in the Sky, it is the third book in a space opera series, This Fine Crew. And This Fine Crew is a very much Star Trek inspired and fueled series. I am a huge Trekkie. I actually do have a comm badge tattoo on my chest. And within that comm badge is the silhouette of the ship from Galaxy Quest. And that was the first inspiration for the title, This Fine Crew, because Tim Allen, in his most melodramatic voice in Galaxy Quest, has this speech where he goes, "This fine ship and this fine crew." And I, of course, had to take the ball and run with that and not stop at the end zone. Seed in the Sky is the third book in the process of multi-species cadets going through their academy training in order to create the Interstellar Initiative, which is supposed to be a peaceful, totally non-military venture to explore the stars. And the seed in the sky, the source of the title and also depicted in there, is a mostly organic, but also kind of unknown object that appears somewhere near Earth's moon and coalesces into a solider and solider object until it is what is known as the twisted obelisk, is what they end up calling it. But the very first descriptor one of the characters gives to it is a seed in the sky. And the book, The Seed in the Sky, without giving too much away about the previous books in the background, prior to starting the Interstellar Initiative, human beings were involved in an interstellar war. And in fact, that was their first impression for most of the aliens in what is known as common space. They were brought in because this other alien group was like, you know, we have really good propulsion technology and we can help you with your environment, but we're not good at blowing stuff up. Humans, we've checked you out. We know you can blow stuff up. Please come blow stuff up for us. So the humans came and blew stuff up. Not a true story yet, but it makes perfect sense to me. And then afterwards, they got a reputation for being warmongering. So they started the Interstellar Initiative to be a completely peaceful venture that they could bring in a bunch of different species and have them work together. And unfortunately, while they're trucking along through their academy of new recruits and building the initiative to do their first exploration missions, this thing appears in the night sky over Earth, and it is a call from their past sins in the war. So there is some commentary on the book blurb and the Amazon ad about how the past sins of humanity are coming back to haunt them, which honestly I find a lot of fun whenever that shows up in science fiction. Yeah, so for people who have read books 1 and 2, the Freedan, or the space ghost that can pass through walls without giving too much more away, this is related to that mystery, and you know, you get to unveil a little bit more of it.
Well, as far as I can tell, I have started reading book 1, so I will be diving more into that. And already, just from a few chapters, I see that there are multiple unique races that you've created in this. So I'm really excited to see this, you know, intergalactic space opera and all the different things, because they're all, I noticed that there are some that are completely foreign to us, and then others that are foreign to us, but also other races that are similar to each other. So it's not completely different all around. So, and they all have their own interactions, it seems, with each other, and seeing humans come into this as the new kid on the block, I'm excited to dig more into that. So can we have a passage reading scheduled? So from the beginning of the book, right? And a couple.
I will do that, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, unless you want to volunteer to read it, because you have that option too.
That's spoilers, and
Yeah.
my voice is not as wonderful as yours. You have that that wonderful tone.
Well, thank you. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and jump in with the beginning of Seed in the Sky. And actually, just for purposes of screen sharing here, let me pull up the thing on Kindle.
Oh, and if anyone has any questions at any point, they can put them in the chat and I will address them in our Q&A.
All right. Pull up the Kindle of Seed in the Sky. And let me get into contents. This is the very beginning of the book, a flash forward from the point of view of Lidstrom, and you'll see a picture of him later today. Sure enough, the twisted obelisk was opening, triggered by a thought or memory. There was a dip directly ahead of us, and the gargantuan psychic structure created an entrance. The walls funneled before us, then lengthened and widened until there was an opening about 3 times the diameter of our shuttle. We drifted forward on minimal impulse. As our nose passed the rim, the shape appeared to distort and elongate in a way I had always associated with black holes. "We have movement," the Teak pilot observed, and when I faced the forward viewer again, I no longer saw a retracting wall. Instead, behind the theoretically solid veil were thousands of glowing orbs, tiny halos of light, at indeterminate distances ahead of us. I can't describe the sense of wonder it brought, to be so far from anything I had ever imagined while so close to the planet I grew up on. The glowing entities within the obelisk formed various networks and clusters, grouping and separating seemingly at random. The combination of orbiting halos created colors I couldn't describe, which I'm pretty sure did not literally exist in the human visual spectrum. No matter how good my pilot's eyes were, I found it difficult to focus. When I finally did, however, I began to see images, displayed by individual orbs like pixels, or a pre-dawn light show. They clustered into a recognizable, albeit neon version of Luna, a zoomed-in cross-section of the Metz-de-Brave base, and even some of the pulse cannons pointed in the obelisk's direction. It took me a while to recognize their attempt at upper atmosphere shielding, spottily installed throughout Terra. "Are you seeing this?" I asked. "Yeah," Mel said. Then the psychic images began to change. I heard screams and an anguished, "Oh my God," before the dots formed an image of another human shuttle being destroyed before our eyes. The horror relived and displayed for us as hundreds of glowing orbs invaded and ripped apart the crew. Our own shuttle's complement of 5 was reeling from the spectacle and dreading what might happen to us. Someone behind me yelled, "We need to get out of here," and all hell broke loose. And that is the opening. That is how Seed in the Sky starts. Yeah. If you're wondering, I do this with all of the This Fine Crew books. The opening of Signal involves something terrible about to happen to a red terrain vehicle driving on the surface of Mars, and then that becomes the cover. The opening of Rupture involves a minor, huge explosion in a very large ship that jettisons someone out into space, and then that becomes the cover of book 2. And book 3, they are approaching the Twisted Obelisk and then seeing something terrible happening within it, and the cover is this shuttle approaching the Twisted Obelisk. So it is something that I very much enjoyed doing the first draft of book 1. And then like pre-readers enjoyed the heck out of it as well, and we're like, all right, we're going to keep this going. This is a doable thing. Now, I'm going to go ahead, Megan.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, all right. I'm going to go ahead and pull out one other section. Hang on just a moment. So in the previous launch events, I've read that beginning chunk and then a part of a real-time beginning passage. And because we're focusing on Lidstrom, and I'm going to go ahead and show his picture, we will get a little bit more Lidstrom going in at the beginning of the book. So as Megan had mentioned before, and as we talked about a little bit, the This Fine Crew stories involve multiple alien species all trying to interact with humans, and the main human character of the 4 main characters, who I tend to refer to as the core 4 when I'm just talking about this group, is Darren Lidstrom. And this is my portrait of Darren Lidstrom. And Lidstrom is described as having a square Swedish jaw and an annoyingly smug expression. Like, that is the first description ever given of him when he, sees an image of himself that was snapped right before he was sent off to the academy. And he was told, apparently seconds before the picture was taken, that he was the youngest person selected for it. And he was like, oh yeah, that's a cherry on top of the sundae. And so that's my mental image of him, and had to be the drawing of Lidstrom. So with that delightful and smug face in mind, let's get a little bit of Lidstrom for the real-time scene in the beginning of Seed. Chapter 1, Lidstrom. Several weeks earlier, Interstellar Initiative Starship Endeavour. We're hit, I yelled just before the alarm blared, reminding me unnecessarily that we'd lost our left engine, and the hull had taken significant damage. My ship's thresholds for structural integrity had already been tested and exceeded. Castile, I need that stabilizing rigging. I heard a gleeful hiss behind me. Yes! And a clang followed the voice as she wrenched open a panel, breaking the ship to fix it later. Safe or fast? The system's computer picked a dramatic time to chime in, saying, warning, breach imminent. Fast or it won't matter. The 3-handed teak in the co-pilot's seat buzzed with excitement, his eyes glowing bright orange. Coordinates acquired. applying vector headings. His chitinous fingers swiped the data and populated the forward viewer with highlights to show gaps in the debris field. The system repeated its ominous comment, but I talked over it. Paul, can you get me a lateral thruster to compensate for incoming, announced the calm computer voice. Brace, I echoed with less calm. Just before the impact, the deep-voiced Prukta said, shield, in clear enough English human. I was going to ask what she meant, seeing as our ship hadn't had viable shields since about 3 shards of jagged metal ago, but I spotted in the rear view that she had braced to shield herself. Her personal field generated code. Sorry, I'm tripping over my words. I'm going to take a brief sip. Her personal field generator coated her in a shimmering energy layer just in time for the impact. We jarred and jostled. The lights changed erratically, and the hollow hum of a pulse fired through the vessel's interior. Paul's mandibles knocked against each other as his body received the pulse beam. He would have lain there frozen had Arch not arrived to immediately attend and revive him. Yet again, I was glad for her instincts. We knew the pulse could target any of us at random, so she made sure to shield herself, the medic. Diving, I called to warn them of the sudden direction change. I pushed the shuttle as effectively as I was able, while missing one of my primary thrusters. We have stability, called Casil, and I only barely caught sight of her long green tail whipping by as she crossed to another panel to help me with my thruster issue. Paul, stated Arch, righting the arthropod whose shell was still chattering. Then she too veered around to work with Casil. You okay? I asked. Fine, he stuttered. Then with a little more effort, he managed, fine, my motor skills impaired. I empathized. The pulses were no joke when it came to intensity. They did no long-term damage, but could leave you feeling rattled for several minutes and sore for hours. Still, we didn't have time for Paul to feel better. Power through, Paul, I said, trying to sound more encouraging than lecturing. Can you stay on side jet and landing jet to compensate? I saw him nod in my periphery, while I dodged yet another floating chunk of spiked metal asteroid and scanned the screen. Of the remaining exit routes, the widest would require a hard bank to the wrong side. Training overcame my limited two-dimensional nature. Spinning, I announced, and kicked into a hard corkscrew. My straps pulled against my chest, but who could bother to breathe right now? I had seen the way the sim shuttle's hydraulics kicked to simulate a spin, even if they couldn't totally push us upside down. Either way, the image on the viewer completely turned over, putting me close enough in line with where I needed to go. Give me power, I called, and heard a reasonable affirmative from Casil. I slammed forward, aware of the veer and the jerky half corrections from the landing thrusters. It wasn't enough. Casil, are we pressure stable? I asked. Yes, she beat me to the next idea. Standing by to vent port cargo. She had hardly finished saying so when I shouted, Mark. A button and a hard lateral shove created a clear line to open space. We shot out of the rest of the field ballistically, and I let out a hoot of laughter. Paul Newman's eye chrome went through a sudden storm of emotion before turning more neutral again. He pulled up our status with a shaking finger and was about to read our maintenance needs when the low lighting of the shuttle interior changed to full white. A lieutenant's voice came through the speakers, louder and more authoritative than the automated computers. Scenario over. Simulation powering down. I'll pause there. Alrighty.
You had us going.
A little bit.
Man, you sure can write good.
Thank you, Jared.
that was fun. And then to just be told, oh, that's a simulation. All right. So what happens in real life then?
There are some options to, yeah. Yeah, there are some options to get more of that in the book. So yeah. Yeah, I have a lot of fun with those ones. Yeah, so by the end of book 2, the main characters are still cadets in training, and so when we started in book 3, I did feel like playing with that possibility. It's like, well, we can make them seem like they're on a real life and death mission, or we can put them in a simulation that's simulating a life and death mission, because I find that funny. Yeah.
I personally enjoy like having the situation where you have students in a series continue to go back to school. I don't know, Harry Potter. Like they have to keep on learning. You can't just all of a sudden have life-changing event and oh, magically you know everything that veterans take years to learn.
Magically.
Yes. So I like that aspect.
Cool.
Okay. So we have another part of our program. We've got an art reveal. So now that we've just read on our wonderful crew and all their hijinks as they try and survive their simulation, I'm sure all of you are wondering how Mike envisions his characters, all of his races. And we saw Lidstrom. He's very, very smug. So that's always fun. But now I'm curious about the others, especially is it Perkesh? The very tall, furry one, because I keep on thinking of Chewbacca.
Chewbacca's a reasonable place to start. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm gonna first pull up. This is one that's in the chat, and I can also put it back in the chat in a bit as well. I'm gonna pull up some of the early concept art. This was the very first sketch, in like this quick usual suspects kind of way, because I thought it would be amusing to be like, all right, I'm gonna pull out some archetypal alien species. And I'm like, I want some kind of insectoid. I want some kind of large hairy brute that can totally be somewhere between a Wookiee and a Klingon. And then I started playing around with some others. Like, all right, what if we made something that looks more Vulcan than the Vulcans actually look? Like, let's have someone who's like hyper logical. Let's have an uplift rodent, because you need that. I did the front and the side, and then afterwards I was like, oh, I need a cold-blooded reptilian species. So the reptile came out of that one as well. So these were the earliest sketches, and these were actually done about 5 years ago when I was just playing around with the universe as a fun concept, long before I started actually trying to tackle novels in the universe. And I think, I'm not sure if it was the first one or the second one, people asked me about the characters themselves, and I'm like, I haven't actually done formal sketches of the characters. I've done a couple of thumbnails, but nothing that I wanted to be like, this is this character, because I wanted to do it right. Like if I'm telling people who like the story, this is how I see this character, I wanted to do it in a way that would not frustrate the heck out of people by being like not quite right. So I spent some time over the last couple of weeks looking through like some of the different possibilities of the species, and actually also some sketches of skeletons for the species so that I could like make things work together, and putting in what I thought was the best representation of each of the people. So first, we do have Lidstrom. Lidstrom, who is our human character, which is standard enough, and I have drawn many humans over the years. And there's the person next to him who's referred to as Paul Newman. If you have not yet read books 1 or 2, Paul Newman is a teak. The teak they're like 4-foot tall hive mind insects who are occasionally described as uplift cockroaches. And there is a short story that I'm finding a cover for so that I can release it as an in-between thing, called A Roach by Any Other Name. A Roach by Any Other Name was the first contact story with the teak, and has some background of some of the officers who show up in books 1, 2, and 3, and 4 actually. And like, it was just fun to be able to take something that was giant insect scary and make them humans' number one ally. So when I said there was a species that was like, we can help you with your environment and your propulsion if you come blow stuff up for us, it was these guys. So the hive mind insect race becomes the primary allies of the human people, and because they speak with mandibles and their name is Jektik, people call them Teak. They just take the last syllable and go Teak.
Mike, did you draw that?
Yes. Yeah, these are all my sketches. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Thank you. And so when they become part of a human crew, so Teak who are part of the Human Teak Alliance during the war, or are joining the Interstellar Initiative and like, you know, joining the Academy and crews, they pick a name that other species with tongues can pronounce. And Paul Newman, as a bit of a haha, I can pronounce human better than you, picks Paul Newman because he is apparently the only person in his insect graduating class who can effectively say P's, B's, and M's. So Paul Newman was his human name, and Paul Newman is a hilarious and delightful character. Yeah, it was the biggest challenge with Paul Newman is like, all right, how do I make him look more adorable and endearing than just terrifying? And I think it's in the eyes. So you want the compound eyes that are like super hopeful. And I had a lot of fun with the Paul Newman drawing. In the ship, you also heard about a lizard, a high-pitched lizard who was running back and forth. And yeah, long green tail fixing things, and frequently described as having an unnecessarily high number of tiny triangular teeth. And that is Casil. Casil, on the other hand, I did purposely draw in a way that I found creepy. This is Casil. For those of you who have read book one and have met Casil, if you picture this face and then imagine one of the things from the Dark Crystal going, that's a very close to accurate to my mental image of Casil. So Casil is the cold-blooded reptilian species from a species called Sanghar, and a lot of times people refer to her as a lizard, and she does not mind. She takes on that moniker as well. And Casil is somebody who self-proclaims very early on that she was selected to join the initiative because she is a genius, and was also selected to be declawed at a young age because she is a genius. And that's a bit of a snapshot of her psyche. A lot of things like she thinks very highly of herself, not in a way that she's going to go out of her way to put anyone else down, but yeah, there's a smug assumption from her that she knows what's going on. I guess I've got two smug characters. Maybe I shouldn't say smug for her. I'll come up with a different word. There would be Casil. And the fourth one is Prukta. The Prukta, I've drawn more Prukta than any of the other species, I think, by now, because I kept playing around with different ways of setting up the tusks. Shortly after book one came out, I was talking to Ben, who's on the call, and he was asking about like how much they resembled sort of werewolf species, because somebody, one of the humans in book one makes a werewolf comment, and I'm like, yep, I threw in werewolf, and also Wookiee, and also space orc, and also tusks. And it was very much this amalgamation of things. Like I wanted something that looked like the big hairy warrior race and kind of the big brutish warrior race. And this is Arch, who is actually much softer than my first draft of Arch. And one of the things that I thought would be fun to play with Arch is to take somebody who's part of this, you know, big furry warrior race that you think are going to be the giant dumb bruisers, and she's a medic. So she is somebody who, prior to joining the initiative, was kind of working as a student of medicine and also as an escort of the uplift rodent species, who come up to about her knees. So yeah, sorry, an escort in the I'm going to protect you when you dock in stations capacity, because I know the word escort, sometimes people will think, Firefly, yes, I know how this goes. But moving on from that, Uh, as yes, as a teacher who tutors students in middle and high school and sometimes elementary school, sometimes I get asked about the content in my stories, and I'm like it's all very PG. The wording might be, you know, above their heads if they're in elementary school, but yeah, but it's all very PG. And Arksh is, yes, the large, strong, if she gets into a fight, can be the bruiser type. But her first scene in book one, I had so much fun writing it. She actually does get into a fight on a station in defense of a tiny rodent, and wins the fight by knowing exactly where the right places to strike are on an alien opponent, as opposed to just being big and beefy. And I had a lot of fun with that. The Prukta, they do have tusks, and every now and again they'll talk about, you know, how their tusks are interacting in the conversation. But one of the prominent characteristics is that they have underbites, so they're kind of like that bulldog face. And so Arksh, whenever I say it in my head, I always want to like exaggerate the underbite and go Arksh and just like growl it out. This is the kind of nerdism that I get into, and I'm like, how would a Prukta talk? So yes, tusks, underbites, and the fourth party of the core four. So the main cast is those four characters. The only big spoiler that I will give here, as for books 1 and 2, is that those main four characters continue into book 3. So when those characters are introduced in books 1 and 2, they do survive almost entirely. There are some strange and bad things that happen to them, and I will also admit one of them is not fully in one piece by the time they get to book 3, but they all do survive to continue to tell the story. So that is the main spoiler that I will give. Otherwise, I try to refrain from them unless people ask direct questions and I forget myself.
I did notice in the first passage that there was a little hint dropped at someone obtaining an injury that didn't seem like it would heal. So I was like, that wasn't, I'm betting that wasn't from the first book, obviously, but I'll refrain from also spoiling. We'll see if anyone picked up on it.
That's reasonable. I agree. Oh, cool. I'm seeing some commentary in the chat. We've got some love for Paul. Yes, Paul Newman is a lot of fun.
The injury happens in the first novel.
Not there yet.
Yeah. Oh, and Skeksis. Yeah, there we go. Yes, Dino Skeksis. That is a reasonable way to describe Casil. There's a reasonable range between some of the different lizards. They are not all the same category of creepy as Casil. Some of them have their own special brand of creepy, but yeah. Cool. All right, Megan, I'm going to turn it back over to you for a moment while I set up for a drawing.
Okay. Yeah, guys, we're gonna get a drawing. I'm not gonna do it myself because I entered into it. So
And just in case, so I'm not sure if people got a chance to do it, I'm going to drop the link in one more time. So we're going to do a drawing for a book giveaway. There is the link. I think I said the right one. Oh wow, weird. I thought that I saved it, but I did not save it. It still says a Rupture in Time book giveaway survey. Oh well.
Let me see. I pulled up a link.
Well, I went ahead and changed it now, but that's okay. We've already got the responses in.
Let's hope it was correct on Facebook. I imagine it was.
It might not have been. If it wasn't,
Oh,
I'm gonna
yeah.
not worry too much about that one. Cool. All right. So we're gonna do 2. And I need that list as well. Cool. I see a couple more people adding to the list, so I will not do the thing just yet. And if you're already on the mailing list, like, yep, that is cool. No, yeah, no need to say that you're re-adding to the mailing list. I think I had a thing in there about that, but just in case. Da, da, da.
Okay.
Ooh, fun. Yay. I'm liking seeing the favorite characters in the survey. That's always fun for me.
Yeah. So, call me uncultured, but I don't really know who Paul Newman is. I've always heard him referenced. So, can we give some background to why he's an amusing human before he's an amusing insect?
Like Paul
You know?
Newman, the actor.
Yeah.
I don't know how much I would say he was an amusing human. He is in certain roles. You know,
Well,
Butch
Butch
Cassidy and all
Cassidy and the
that.
Sundance
Yeah,
Kid.
there we go. Yeah.
Cool Hand Luke is probably.
Glenn Luke.
I mean, there's a lot. God, there's a lot of movies he was well known for, but Cool Hand Luke's like one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Hustler.
Yep.
Head on a hot tin roof.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. So when I will admit the commentary on Paul Newman's name. So the Teak, they choose names of deceased humans that are semi-famous or very famous in some cases. And Paul Newman is just a fun name to work with because Paul is a Teak who really likes humans, and be able to use the phrase new man at the end of it is fun for me. These are things that I enjoy. Yeah. The first time he tells his human name to an officer in the initiative, and they're like, oh, I think I've heard of this guy. Was he an actor? And Paul Newman is like, yes, he was a star in over this number of films and a purveyor of a citrus novelty beverage. And the officer looks at him like, is like, what? And then somebody else says, lemonade, sir. No kidding, he invented lemonade. And then I move on.
I
It's a
will
good
say,
representation of the Paul Newman humor.
I will say, I expect to see a Bob Ross one though. I need a Bob Ross.
I have not yet created a Bob Ross teak. That's intriguing. That is a thing to consider. Cool. I will keep in mind a Bob Ross teak. Yeah, one of the things that I've debated on doing, and Mark can also probably comment on this as well. In the Chris Kennedy Publishing group, there are a lot of folks who will sort of redshirt real people that they know, and so they'll have like, you know, they'll run a drawing for who wants to be redshirted in the next book. One of the things that I will tell people, especially parents and teachers, is that this fine crew has high peril and relatively low body count. So I can't redshirt people quite as often, but I can include teak names. So the idea of somebody saying, well, yes, I will grow up to be famous and we're going to name a teak after me doing whatever, has occurred to me as a potentially fun thing. So that might be in a later book bit. All right. Anyway, sorry, that took me a little bit longer than maybe it should have, but oh well. All right, I'm going to pull up a random number for people on, so active people on the mailing list and people who signed up for the thing, and then I'll get one from within this group. And we may or may not get a drum roll. And the winner, that's convenient. The winner of the drawing is Preston Beck, who is not on this call, but something that is worth noting, actually, Preston is the person that this book is dedicated to. Morgan is the only person who would probably be aware of that and the why. So yes, Preston Beck was Preston Beck is a friend of mine, and he was a like business mindset mentor for me for like a little over a year. And like, I mean, I wasn't in the same realm of business as him because I'm like, I want to be an author. But we had a lot of talk about like, you know, business mindset and like, you know, self-improvement and things along those lines. And so over a while of working with him and like, maintaining a friendship, I'm like, all right, we're going in our different directions. He is going much more like, classic business building. And I'm like, I'm building my author business. And the book was dedicated to Preston Beck. So yeah. So I have drawn him. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull somebody from this list. Let me get the number on here and then also remove myself from the drawing. In the last one, I did not think to remove myself from the drawing. So I just, I was lucky enough not to draw myself. Okay. All right. So from the number of people on here, generating, spinning, we have Alex Charney Cohen. The winner of the drawing that is on the call is Alex Charney Cohen. Congratulations, Alex. And Alex, I have to ask, would you like a copy of book 1, 2, or 3?
Well, I'm about to buy book 1 for my book club. I actually recommended book 1 to a book club that I recently joined, and they were all like, "Ugh, our books are so depressing and not fun, and I want just to read something uplifting and fun." And I said, "Well, I don't know how many people here like sci-fi, but there's a bright young aspiring author, actually not even aspiring anymore, an author, but a fresh face." And everybody was like, "Sure, we'll give it a try." Of course, they also said, "Yeah, and if we don't like the book, we reserve the right to give you a really hard time." It's like, okay.
That is so pressuring. All right. I hope that your book club likes
having read some of your having read some of your other stuff, Mike, I'm not, and knowing you, I'm not too worried.
Sounds good.
I think they're gonna enjoy it.
Excellent. So I would just like to say that between Charlie, Nick, and Alex, it's all going to the same family. If you know.
I hear my wife laughing in the other room. Yeah.
So anyway, I'll take book 2, Mike.
All right, sounds good. Despite Nick's protest, yes. All right. Well, thank you, Alex, and congratulations on the spin and win. Oh, that's funny. Okay. Cool.
All right.
It's clearly rigged.
I mean, I could make a very in-world comment on this. Casil believes so Casil is very religious. Her faith is based on a series of like Songhar philosophies, one of which is the poetry of convergence. So Tasenda is the poetry of convergence, and she talks about it often. And so when other people are saying things are coincidences or just like weird random happenstance, she's like, oh no, it is the poetry of convergence. It is the universe wanting to guide things in this direction. So that is my answer to the why. Cool. All right. So that is actually it for the things that I needed to do, and that brings us into Q&A mode. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and unspotlight myself so that like if we have other people chatting along the way, we'll get different spotlights going around. But does anyone have any questions, comments, curiosities? And if you want to say them out loud, yay. If you want to not say them out loud and type them in the chat, then Megan will relay them and we'll go from there. Oh.
I just would like to say that I'm very happy that the way you did it from each character's perspective, and that each chapter was the character narrating it. I love that. Awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. I was told by some of the pre-reading groups that it might be a hard sell, and I'm like, it might be, but I really enjoy it this way, so I'm gonna try it.
Worked.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
I mean, I feel like that fits the genre and feel you want to go for, because if you're you're basing it off of Star Trek, it's an ensemble cast thing.
Yeah.
So you get your stories with the engineer, and you get your stories with the medic, and you get your stories with each character along the way. It wouldn't feel as much in like that type of universe if it wasn't done that way. Does that make sense?
I mean, I would agree. I will totally take a justification in that favor. So yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, some of it does come down to preference, and there are definitely some people who've been like, I don't want to jump perspectives, and I'm like, that's fine. I just need to make it as clear as possible from the beginning if that's what's going on, so that I don't steer people wrong in the book.
So I have a question, actually, a couple of questions. So what I've read so far, Lidstrom was born in the 2080s, I believe.
Yes.
So what made you decide the time period and the projection of human advancement, and so I suppose this would be 18 years after that. So they're in the early 2100s, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good. So nobody has asked me that one yet, which is like an interesting thing to think about. So I chose it. How do I say this? I chose this because I'm a bit of a narcissist and it was my series. And let me explain why. So I was born in 1989, which hopefully isn't hugely shocking for people. If it is, I don't know which direction of shocking, so I'll ask you all to keep it to yourselves. But I was born in 89 and I graduated high school in 2007. And so I was thinking through various timelines for when they had first contact and when they had different eras of society sort of start and stop or rise and fall in human civilization. And I was like, I'm going to have a heck of a time keeping track of the years. And I was like, oh, well, here, I'll make it easy for myself. I'll just bump it ahead 100 years of my timeline. And Lidstrom can be, an 18 and 19-year-old kid in the opening books, and that makes it easy for me to figure out where it goes. So Lidstrom was born in Detroit, Michigan, in the northern Allied States in 2089, 100 years after me. And my dad is from Detroit, and a lot of his side of the family is from Detroit. And so the two main human characters who show up are a
Oh no,
Swedish
you
kid
cut out
from
your
Detroit.
sound.
My sound cut out?
Now you're back, but
All right. Well, hopefully it's okay.
I heard it.
Okay.
I mean, you were all the way through.
Yeah.
I'm still stunned that you were born in 1989. Man, I feel old.
In a good or bad way, I don't know. I'm like,
well, I graduated high school in 1988.
Yeah.
Rules when you put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, my copy of Pawn of Prophecy is older than you.
my copies of a lot of my science fiction books are older than me. But yeah, so the two main human characters, one of them is Swedish kid from Detroit. My mom's family is English and Swedish, and the other guy is a Greek kid from Portland, and he's about 20 years old, Portland, Oregon. And I did most of my growing up in Vancouver, Washington, and or family in Michigan, in both Detroit and like Uper area. So that's where that started. As far as the future history of human society, my favorite part of it was like naming the different eras that things went in terms of like major movements in the United States or the Western world, or even like the connected information world. But a lot of it I get to sort of change drastically once first contact is made public and second contact is made public and settlement of Mars happens. And I'm like, cool, I can use those as these big things that might seem like Deus Ex Machina to history. Because if an alien species with greater propulsion technology swoops in and fixes things for us, then it would drive things forward very quickly. Yeah. Not sure if that answers the question, but that was the thought process.
It works. I mean, I was expecting like all this logic about, oh, well, I projected, human, technology in this. Nope, it's just, it was 100 years after I was born.
Oh, yeah.
And I noticed the Greek kid, and I know
Yes.
you're Greek, so it's like you got yourself in two different characters.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And the Greek character, so Yorgos Stratis, you're going to see him in the books as well. And that was one that was fun to share with the family, because within the extended Greek family, there's a Stratis family, and one of the other families starting with an S, Souris, their oldest son, who's close to my age, is named Yorgos. So I've got a Stratis, I've got a Yorgos, and the mental image and description of him is of my cousin Dimitri Stoumbos. So between Panos Stratis, Yorgos Stratis, and Dimitri Stoumbos, those are like three of my cousins sort of jammed into one character, and I had a lot of fun with that. So yeah.
All right. So Jared just asked, will you be writing the fourth book next, or will you be working on a different project?
I am writing the fourth book. So yeah, so in talks with the Chris Kennedy publishing team, and like in particular, talking with the boss, talking with Chris. I was like, all right, I've got these possibilities on the horizon in terms of different books that I can work on, including some of my backlist and maybe getting it to an agent or self-pubbing it, or working with another group on another universe. And then there's also the possibility of going right into book 4. What do you recommend? And he's like, it's like, man, just go straight into book 4. Get that one done as soon as possible, and get it out to the fans so they don't forget you after book 3. He might have been a little bit softer on saying that, but then again, maybe not. And I think it's actually probably pretty good advice. So yeah, I'm working my way through book 4. Book 4, 5, and 6 are kind of their own trilogy. They do continue the story of this fine ship and this fine crew, but they also form a little bit of a trilogy arc. And one of the things that I'm trying to do with book 4 is making it an easier entry point into the series, so that if somebody hasn't read the first 3 and they happen to see book 4, they can pick that one up, and that would be a fun one to get into without having to know all the backstory, and then maybe later can decide to read it from the beginning. Books 1, 2, and 3, however, I would highly recommend reading them in order in terms of how they shape in the series.
So in other words, I know you're working on book 4, and I don't know how much you have planned for 5 and 6, but say you write those and you have the first 6 books. If someone were brand new, would you still say start on book 1? That's the best place to begin.
I think I would. I mean, it's possible that I will have so much fun with book 4 or 5 or 6 that I'll be like, this one's just awesome, and like you might as well read it because it's a really fun ride. And given the way the book 4 is going, I might say that anyway. But I will also note that from a series perspective as a reader, I really like book 1 of a lot of series, even if book 1 is not a lot of people's favorites. So even in some of like the long sweeping series like the Dresden Files, I love book 1. I love me some Stormfront. Yeah, in the paperback, not Kindle or the audiobook. Those are both great. Not gonna knock them, but like my personal favorite, Stormfront paperback, yay. And then like for Star Wars, the original as an episode 4 is my favorite, and so I'm that way. I really like the very beginning of a lot of series, and so my personal bias would probably veer people toward book 1. Cool thing, book 1 is going through a promo sale right now. So it is available for 99 cents while we're launching book 3, so that if people want to like jump into the series for a very low cost, then we have that available. And according to Chris, it has been doing well. We have been moving some units of book 1. I don't know a lot of the data on the Amazon sales rankings, but bye John.
Do you want to learn?
What's that?
Do you want to learn?
Probably eventually. I'm not sure if it's the forefront right now.
It's so easy you're gonna cry.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a thing to tackle at a time. Yeah, baby. But
What's your current sales rank, and I'll show you how to do it.
So it was at like 3,700 in the Kindle store overall today, which was cool.
So
And
somebody just posted a link in the chat.
Somebody was marked.
Somebody?
I'm outing him.
And so you click on that and you type in your rank, and it'll show you how many books you're selling.
Okay. Nice. Well, thank you. Okay. Let me
Remember, it's an
find
estimate.
image just in case. Yeah. These are always the estimates.
Isn't that cool? I told you it was so simple.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. Here, I took a screenshot of it just in case to be able to, record for posterity. So this was the rank today. And this isn't like all of Kindle Store. So out of the millions, and I do mean millions. And so that means at the moment 56 books per day or whatever that has gone up or down from by estimate. So cool.
Look at you.
Yeah.
See, you're on fire.
Moving some books. Yeah. Excellent. I have learned a thing today. Yeah.
I just posted the link for Signal Out of Space
Cool.
in the chat. Oh, grab it if you haven't gotten it yet.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Ben.
Hey, so I just thought of this one as we were talking about your timeline and going into, we meet characters that are from the initial war you harken back to as history. Have you given any thought to going back and writing a prequel other than the short story you mentioned about the first interactions and or the war that got these races to interact in the first place?
I have not given any serious thought to it. I have not done the outlining. I will say this though, like if I have a group of readers that are saying, hey, I want to know what happened then, that will be one of those things that will totally fuel me to write whatever kind of thing. Yeah, I'm definitely somebody who responds very favorably and also very quickly to people saying, oh, I want to hear a story about this. And I'm like, I can type that. I'll do it. Let me go tackle it this weekend and get it back to you. And in terms of short stories, that's actually how I handle a lot of short stories, which has been translating very well to like getting stuff accepted lately, because somebody will say, want to hear a story about this? And I'm like, I can do that.
I'm sure you have it worked out in your mind. You give pieces of history as you go through the books, but I'm sure you have a lot more detailed history.
Yeah,
that's not fully written in.
Yeah, well, here actually, so there's one cover that I'm gonna go ahead and share up here. So I'm gonna share a cover of a book that's actually coming out in 2 weeks. And Kevin is on the call. So Kevin Davis is the curator and producer of this anthology. This is the Hidden Villains anthology. And I have a story in here, and it is a story with a very direct tie-in to Seed in the Sky. It is a prequel story with some of these like origin pieces that I have had a couple of my pre-readers ask if this was like part of a larger novel. I'm like, no, as is just the story. And the story is from that interstellar war that gave humans the reputation that they have. And it's cool. I will say that it felt a little bit more like deep and dark and creepy, which I think also fits the cover, than some of like the more uplifting and funny stuff in the novels. But if you're looking for some of the backstory or a piece of interconnected This Fine Crew between books, then the story in Hidden Villains is a direct tie into book 3, and the short story A Roach by Any Other Name, that I'm getting a cover done for, so I can do that as like an in-between release. That one is a tie into book 4. So I've got like these pieces of prequels that are setting the universe. And so I would agree that I know enough about the universe to be able to write these ones, but I do not have an outline or a plan for when I would be writing them per se. Yeah. I don't know, Ben, is that something you'd be interested in reading?
Of course, that was one of my first things I as we talked after I called you after reading the first book, on how it's amazing how I can read the book that fast and have it take place over such a period of time, and dropping little hints here and there about what's happened in the past in history. Yep. I would very much like that, I'm sure.
Awesome. Yeah.
But another thing I wanted to compliment you on, I haven't got to talk to you since I finished the second book, is how, without spoiling anything, you give a really, well, pretty realistic, I think, approach to the different races being pulled together and it being new and things not working out as planned.
Yeah.
And then also having the crew that works better than most, but still has these issues that it becomes very apparent that they still aren't right away this bonded crew, and things rip them apart, but they still come back together throughout the first and the second book. I really enjoyed that as we got into the second book, as
Awesome.
you felt cohesive, and then it's kind of like, yeah, not so much, and it really worked well. Enjoyed it.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I have made the comments to a couple of people who have read the first book that I'm curious to see like how they personally prefer the first or the second, because the second does have a little bit more of that, like, I guess, angst to it. I mean, when you say angst, sometimes people think of like, you know, like teen angst kind of stuff. And this one's not like over who's dating who. It's like over whether or not this organization is going to decide to oust me because of how I may or may not relate to these aliens. And so yes, there's more of an angsty quality to the second book. I mean, there's still, you know, the characters are still the characters, and they have their inner narrations and like their various wit, but they also have some of that, like, oh crap, this might not work out as well as we thought and hoped it would. But yeah, cool. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, and in terms of wanting to know more of like the backstory and unraveling that stuff, I think that you'll really like when they dig into it more in book 3, because book 3 you get a lot more meat on the war that they're kind of trying to shove under the rug in books 1 and 2. Sorry if that's a spoiler, but I'm hoping that when people read books 1 and 2, they're getting the impression that this thing's being shoved under the rug and it's going to come back to bite them. Yeah.
See,
All right.
that intro music came up again. All right.
Wow.
Does anyone have any other questions?
There was so I saw a question in the chat from Jared, seeing if there were any others in here, but so yeah, so Jared asked the question, besides Amazon reviews and shares, are there any other spaces such as Goodreads, for example, that we could go to post about your book once we've read it? Yeah, this is one of those things that I will admit I'm still kind of new to the game, and I don't know which things are the best things to do. My general answer, though, is yes, please. You know, in a way that works for you and is genuine. Like, I am super appreciative of that. I know the book 1 is at least is on Goodreads, and I'm in the process of getting my author profile approved so I can claim the books on BookBub as well. But beyond that, I'm not really sure. I do a lot of stuff on Facebook and Twitter to try to get like some blast promotions going, and that is growing bit by bit. I can't say that I know the algorithms, and you know, I kind of have to like throw something out there, see what works, and then take a step back and be like, all right, if I'm looking at the data, which part of the data correlates to which thing that I may or may not have done, and I'm probably only taking a best guess. And I think that's just kind of how it works right now. So yeah, I am hoping to get more information on that. I've been asking some folks who have been doing this longer than I have, kind of what they do and where they go with it. But yeah, reviews and ratings and anything that like talks up the book in a positive, genuine way. Yeah, it's greatly appreciated.
So we have a more amusing question from Caitlin. If the crew got together for a D&D session night, what class would each character be?
Caitlin knows I play D&D. We have had many conversations on the D&D. So which one they would be versus which one they would play might actually be two different answers there. So Lidstrom as a pilot would be any kind of thing where he can be in the scout role. So if Lidstrom were like playing himself, he would be like a halfling outrider on a giant dog trying to go ahead of people as quickly as possible. And if you were playing a character, he would make a halfling outrider on a giant dog trying to go ahead of people as quickly as possible. So that one, yes to both. Paul Newman. Paul Newman is, unfortunately, I think Paul Newman seems like the NPC in terms of a lot of class stuff. He's a little bit of jack of all trades, master of none in terms of like how he can show up in a combat situation. But he's a communications officer, a teak, an optimist, and he also, as a teak, can do various hindbrain connection things with potentially psychic entities. So to that end, he ends up communicating with people. The style of Paul's desire to communicate means that if you were to play a character, I think he would try to play a bard. And I think he would attempt to learn to sing for the occasion. I don't think he would be good at it, but I think he'd be a very entertaining D&D player. Casil is, Casil is an engineer who fancies herself a rogue. And if she were playing a character, she would want to play like the most upscale aristocratic paladin, and the GM would constantly be going, wait, Casil, that's against your alignment. And she says, no, I have formed my own reason for why this is true. Let me give you this 20-minute diatribe for this choice. And then there's Arch. And Arch in the real world is a cleric who is cast in too many different roles. One of the things that I personally love all of these characters, and yet I do bad things to them. One of the bad things that I do to Arch is I take this person who believes in a philosophy of stoicism and wants to be able to remain calm through a lot of things that are happening and wants to have a reliable order that she can do things in. And I keep putting her in situations that are completely contrary to what she has planned to do or trained for, because often she happens to be the only witness to this event, or she is the only person with connections to this Purukta from a royal house and they need somebody to call, or she is the person who traveled with this Belbay. The Belbays are the rat people. She traveled to the Belbay and they need a Belbay to be able to deal with something, even though something is preventing the initiative formally from communicating with the rat people. And they're like, Arch, we need to rely on you to do this. Can you be a diplomat? And she's like, I don't want to be a diplomat. This is not my role. That is the bad stuff that I do to Arch. I do other bad things to her, and honestly, the physical pain she can take. But when I do bad things to her, it's putting her in those kinds of roles. So yeah, so she in real life would be the cleric who is cast in too many other roles. If she were playing a character, I think she would try to refuse playing a character. She would be the person who's dragged into the story as like no, we need a fourth for this adventure. And she would eventually be like, all right, what one is easiest? Oh, this fighter has a lot of armor and can stand in the middle of things and take hits from things. Okay, fine. And she would probably play the fighter. All right, that is the rundown of a not very effective D&D party. I hope you enjoyed that, and hopefully it doesn't, turn you off from reading the series of this particular group of people.
No, it's the miracle of them managing to survive with their crazy discordant group. That's the story to read.
Yeah. We're a little bit after the hour, which means that let's see, do we have any last things we want to get on the recording?
Yes, so
let me see.
yeah, so we're ending it. So do you have any other releases? So you mentioned Hidden Villains, and we have the third book, and you're working on the fourth. Is there anything else secretly in the works?
Yes, two of them that are not so secret. So there's the Hidden Villains anthology coming out on the 17th. And I'm going to share the cover. The cover reveal for Writers of the Future Volume 38 was actually earlier this week. And so this is the cover for Volume 38 that's coming out April 8th. And I've got a story in that one, which I am still not allowed to talk about in public, which is like kind of awesome and awful. But I have a story in that one, and the only thing that I'm allowed to say about it is that I like it and I sent it to this contest. But otherwise, yeah, otherwise it kind of is left to imagination for the moment. But one of the things that I have been working on in the last week is getting covers set up for a couple of short stories that I'm using as giveaways. So part of the building a newsletter that I have been learning from other authors who have been there before me and who have done it very well is that I need giveaways, and I've been trying to set that up with my newsletter. And I will be honest, I'm still learning the programming as I go, but setting up for Kindle Reader. One of my short stories from a former anthology. This is a Space Dragon story. It's called Black Tide's Last Ride. And so I got that cover done and set up. And this was like, took the graphic from pre-made cover and sort of tweaked it a little bit, made it my own. And Black Tide's Last Ride, a Space Dragon story, is one of those that's going to be part of the newsletter. So setting that up on hosting sites so that people can get it in whatever form they're able to read effectively. And then a little bit later, a novella about a computer wizard. Clarence Hemlock, Computer Wizard. This was published last year, actually, with Camden Park Press in Street Magic, and the rights were reverted to me. So I'm going to put it out there as another one of those sort of story giveaways. And then finally, there's the one that I don't have the cover for yet, A Roach by Any Other Name, which is a This Fine Crew prequel story. So those are the things that I have in the works at the moment. It's been a fun, hectic time, and also a couple of things that I can't publicly announce yet in the short story front. So yeah, it's been a very good spring for things coming out and being very excited about new stories. I think that is my list, unless I missed anything.
Mike, do you have any plans to do audio versions of This Fine Crew?
That is a good question, and I will admit I don't personally have the answer to that one. So through Chris Kennedy Publishing, they do audiobooks usually about 6 months to a year after the book is released. Since this is a new universe and new imprint in Chris Kennedy Publishing, this one's probably going to be closer to the year. I don't know who's going to be reading it. I have had people ask me if I'm going to read it, and the answer to that is I don't know. If that's something that, based on how I've read it and some of like the clips that I've posted on YouTube, the readers are responding well to it, then it's something that we will visit as a team because we've talked about it as a possibility. But otherwise, if there's somebody who is more professional at it, then it will go to the more professional. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's a great answer, but that is my answer.
So, last question, I'm gonna guess. Where in the series would you recommend reading the story in Hidden Villains?
Oh, where in the series? Okay, any of them. So Hidden Villains is a prequel story that regards the war, and it has so the 6 characters in the story in Hidden Villains all appear in book 1. So you can get background on all of them. They don't all appear in books 2 and 3, but you definitely get remnants of each of them, and some featured more than others. So one of the characters in Hidden Villains is super prominent in book 1. Another one is super prominent in book 2. Another one is super prominent in book 3. However, the big tie-in for what happened with the war is most related to some events that happen in book 3. Having read the story in Hidden Villains prior to getting to book 3, nothing wrong with that. It will not it will not knock out the experience or spoil the thing in a way that I think will not work. And actually, if you decide that that's not the case and you're like, I felt like that was pre-spoiled in the wrong way, let me know so I can change the disclaimer on it. But I think that it can be read in any order. Yeah. I think.
All right. Well, that just about wraps everything up. So we'll end the recording here, and then we'll keep the Zoom meeting open for anyone who wants to just keep on chatting. We'll be off recordings. So, you guys can proceed to say whatever you want.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. This has been awesome. I will definitely also appreciate post recording if you have feedback about the format of this one. Like that would be great too. And yeah, cool. And thank you once again, Megan, for hosting.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right.